Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
After a sensational battle between the top two in the championship at round 2 at Mugello, we've head for the first time this season to a direct correlation between iRacing and the world of the Formula 1 calendar. A place which for the longest time hosted the final round of the Formula 1 championship. A place which is the perfect test of every characteristic of a racing car. Welcome to Mie Prefecture, Japan, and to the Suzuka International Racing Circuit. Here with us and this racing course, the Grand Prix layout for the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. It's round 3 of the championship, which means that everybody is setting themselves up for the best that they possibly can. And today, it may just be the strongest strength of field we have ever seen in the Grand Prix Tour. My name is Jake Sperry. Along with me for the ride today, as per usual, is Taylor Mills. Dan Yeaman on production for us here today. But Suzuka is a circuit that does everything out there, tests every part of a vehicle, and I would say from when you had the late 80s, early 90s issues with Senna and Prost, it turned into a classic immediately.
And what is there to say about this fantastic circuit as we have our Google Earth view at what is a lot of drivers' absolute favorite track down here at Suzuka? You've got 18 corners in front of our drivers, including that fearsome run down into turn 1, DRS wide open through what is now a flat out first corner, threading your way through those very tricky S's as you make your way back up the hill and down into the Degner curves. Back up the hill once again into the Nissan brake hairpin, and then through the huge long 200R that feeds you right into Spoon Curve, which is one of the trickiest corners on the Formula 1 calendar, before that flat out blast down to 130R before slamming on the brakes for the Hitachi Astemo hairpin. There is only one DRS zone out here on the track today, detection point before turn 16, and then it is that run down into turn 1. So the cars weren't already going to be going fast down there anyway. With that rear flap open with 15 kilometers per hour extra speed, they're going to be going even quicker.
They're going to be flying along that front stretch, and they've got to be very careful not to do a Jack Doohan out there in through the opening corner here in this one. A circuit that has many places to go out there and attack. You can see as well with tyre strategy, the likes of the Gyakubank seemed to be very good for Jacob Reed last time out. A race 1 year ago, by the way, that went down to the final chicane here around this circuit, knowing how important these 18 turns are to go and put the lap together that is needed. So they know that's what's coming up, but we've got to talk championship as well, and there are 2 championships to fight with here with us at SimSpeed TV. There is your DRS detection zone, which is just before that Astemo chicane, which ends out the lap, and then that DRS zone, which goes all the way to turn number 1. Expect either the button to be manually pressed off or a light dab of the brake to go into that opening corner. But let's talk championship then, just for a moment, because Jacob Reed on iRacing Championship standings has the slenderest of margins here, Taylor, and the answer is 1 point.
Yes, slenderest of margins is there, to put it lightly. A single point separates the top 2 in the championship coming into round 3. That is, of course, partially due to the fact that whoever's put it on pole position hasn't won the race in either of the first 2 rounds. the eventual winner of those races, the driver that sat in P2. It has been between Reed and Radice as to which one it was out of those two that took the win. And it's pretty much been a battle with everyone else to see who can bring it home in third. You can see that by the absolute spread of points further down the field. 57 points between second and third, and then another 30 almost back to P4.
Yeah. So much going on in the iRacing Championship, but the SimSpeed Championship, it is deadlock over at the top of the standings. 43 apiece for Eduardo Radice and Jacob Reed, and I think only the fact that there's a fastest lap for Eduardo Radice gives him the tiebreaker over Jacob Reed at the moment. Volta Lux finds himself third ahead of Emil Bernstorff, with James Byrne and Florian Kammeyer in 5th and 6th positions. It's then Jorge Martinez along with Anthony Cat, Edward Apari RE finding himself in 9th after two very good qualifyings so far this season from him, and Connor Pooler making his first start of the season last time out at Mugello, finding 4 points, which puts him up on the top 10 of the standings. But let's talk about what strategy they have available to them today, Taylor, because we're expecting here this 53-lap race to be very important. 2 tyre compounds must be used, DRS available from the start of lap 3, and 3 different winners in the last 3 runnings of this series when we've come to this circuit. 2022 went the way of Andreas Henkel, Jacob Reed took 2023, and Jordan Gronkowski last year.
Yeah, of course, Reed looking to take that victory out here today. Maybe going to be one of the first drivers to convert that pole position into a win, but we will have to see. I think the really interesting thing about tyre strategy coming into this is the fact we run 1 compound softer than in real life. So I think for the most part, we're going to be expecting 1 extra pit stop over real life, and certainly a lot of drivers having to manage the tyres like they have done all season long. It's been one of those things that's been so important, and it's certainly something I'm going to be keeping my eye on today.
Yeah, and I'll also be keeping my eye on some drivers like Emil Lundell, for example. Qualifying currently underway. He's never started a race out of pole position. 5 starts, 5 pole positions. Here's your tyre data. Volta Lux kindly providing 2 or 3 stop today as the strategy between mediums and softs. And the winning strategy from the 10 a.m. split earlier on today by Luke Vesti was a medium soft of 2017 and 16 to get that over the line. So keep an eye out on those times and who improves and who finds what out there in terms of qualifying, because we are in for an absolute treat. And as things stands, it is Emil Lundell who currently has the pole position on a 127.9. Jacob Reed's second lap's just gone through its second. There's your tyre life we're expecting. 16 to 21 on the softs, 22 to 29 on the mediums. If you need to go to the hard tyre, 30 to 40, you're now looking at potentially a 1-stop strategy here today in this race. But it leaves options open here, Taylor.
Yeah, it certainly does. Again, with how wide those pit stop margins are, it's something that we've always seen drivers in this series able to really push to their limits. Like, I think even at Phillip Island, we saw drivers take in 30 laps out of a set of softs. So I do trust the projected tyre life data, but I don't trust that the field are going to stick to those today. I certainly won't be surprised if we see another 30-lap run out of those soft tyres today, which will really open the strategy a bit further down the line.
We just got word that Emil will be on pole, but it's not Emil Lundell for the first time in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. Emil Bernstorff's just put a 27.8 down on the board, and that is good enough for him to be on pole provisionally at the moment with just under a minute and a half to go here in qualifying. Those times are so important to see on the board, and it looks like that the handful of drivers who are trying to put their times down have done everything they can do. Florian Kammeyer is out there on track, but I am just looking at this field, and it's worth stating this again. 5,772 iRating average out there. You need 4,100 iRating just to get in today.
Yeah, I've seen some strengths of field in my time back in the LMP1 days, the height of the IMSA sports car stuff, especially when the SEO were running LMP2s. The softs that we used to get on those race weeks was absolutely insane. But it's never been as high as 5.7K average. I think we were looking before the session that we've got drivers, multiple drivers, above 7,000 9,000 iRacing, and I think we've got a couple of them up in the 8 and 9K as well, which is absolutely unheard of in IGPT.
It is, and you've got drivers like Emil Bernstorff, for example, who's been pushing over at the 9,000 iRacing range. You've got drivers everywhere hoping they can find those improvements. Kamaya, currently P5 at the moment, needs just a 1/10 of a second to go and jump up the order here to improve that time. You can see 55 seconds in the first sector, 26.4 middle sector, and sliding about, which is just him on an outlap then, and then diving down in. We've still got Kent Nielsen yet to set a time, but I think that will be qualifying done and dusted here, so unable to get around. Let's take a look at the field and how it stacks. It's an all Emil front row of your field here at Suzuka. Emil Bernstorff will lead Emil Lundell away. The only two in the 1:27, so 27.8 and a 27.9 respectively. Your title contenders are on row 2. Jacob Reed third, ahead of Eduardo Radice in 4th. It is then on row 3, Florian Kamaya, who starts in 5th, with Anthony Catt in 6th position. Volta Lux will have to go from P7, along with James Byrne, who's had 2 very strong finishes in the points over the first 2 rounds. Alex Hagland, who got himself caught up in dramas at Mugello last time out, has Lucas Prada from the WSR Esports butt kicker team alongside him on the top 10, as Jorge Martinez and Brad Newman house row 6 overall. In 13th will be Nacho Gaspar. Alongside him is Wesley Batista, as Danilo Piazza will go from 15th position, with Leonardo Bravo, the Chilean, going from 16th. Nick Burke and Paul O'Regan are 17th and 18th on this field, with Adam Webb and Connor Pooler, the last 2 drivers to set a representative time. A far cry for Connor Pooler than the pole positions he had 2 years ago. But Jason Anderson, making his first start in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, starts 21st, along with Kent Nielsen, the driver with the most starts in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. This one today for Kent Nielsen will mark his 63rd iRacing Grand Prix Tour start, as the drivers look to get themselves gridded up on this downhill run to the first corner. You can throw it around the outside if you're very brave here today, and there's certainly opportunities for that. For the first time, Emil Lundell has started off of the pole position. He's never finished outside the podium. A win, a second, and 3 third-place finishes. Emil Bernstorff looking to pick up his 2nd win in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history after the victory he was able to get at VIR last year. Jacob Reed and Eduardo Radice, your championship contenders, sit and wait. But what about Kamaya and Cat and Lux? Everyone has a shot today. Suzuka, 53 laps, gets itself underway. Horrible wheel spin from the front 2, and Jacob Reed slides the gap and takes the lead, and Radice will challenge him over towards turn 1 as they now look to try and dive through. Lux having to get on the brakes, and around the outside, one car goes off. Reed gets the launch that he wants. Kamaya up to 3rd, but a disastrous start as they junk in the middle of the field. It's a massive accident. Hagland's caught up in it. You've got Piazza in it. Nielsen's caught up, and so too is Connor Pooler.
Yeah, certainly a lot of drivers that I was keeping my eye on there today. Danilo Piazza, who's had a couple of alternate strategies he's tried to make work, getting tangled up there, but just your typical turn 1, turn 2 at Suzuka there. Too many cars trying to go into a really small amount of space, and it just ends in absolute disaster.
It started with Alex Hagland running up the back of Volta Lux. So we got many drivers in the pits, and out on the opening lap, there's contact for Emil Bernstorff now, who's going back down through the order here. He's now dropped back behind Wesley Batista after contact at the Nissan brake hairpin. So it's really raining and pouring for Emil Bernstorff on this first lap. That was down to Brad Newman, almost getting into the back of Volta Lux. But Jacob Reed, great start for him. He leads this race, the ultimate start that he wanted. Radice is looking to break away, and I think he's already got a second out there in this pack from what he's got. Bernstorff down to 9th on the opening lap, as Brad Newman finds himself under pressure from James Byrne. No DRS here at the moment. Here as Volta looks for the inside on Emil Lundell, who he himself had a shocker.
Oh, that was a pretty solid move down the inside for, I think that was James Byrne just there. Newman couldn't really do anything to defend against that one as Byrne starts to make his way off into the distance. But you said it yourself, Sperry, it was one heck of a start from Jacob Reed, and I think we were expecting something a little bit different from the all Emil front row. But just like that, both of our championship contenders are leading the field.
Oh, look at Lux as he's gone and made that pass. What a sensational move on Emil Lundell going into the S-curve and then confirming it heading to Gyakubank. What a pass by Volta Lux. Lundell down to 6th position then and dealing with James Byrne. And Bernstorff's around. Emil Bernstorff goes around at the Nippo corner after contact with Brad Newman.
Yeah, I'm just trying to have a peek at what happened there. I think
he just lost it.
Yeah, no, he just loses it all on his own on the way up the hill. It's one of the trickier corners on the track where the traction really starts to get away from you. And honestly, you think you'd expect a little bit better from Bernstorff, but that proves that Suzuka is a track that can bite even the best.
Well, a lot to dissect through the opening couple of laps, and we'll take a chance to look at what happened to Emil Bernstorff first and foremost. So he gets a tap through the middle of the corner there at the Gyakubank from Brad Newman, and then he just drops it through the corner, just completely rattled from the start of this race for Emil Bernstorff. Turned around, and now with it all to do from 17th. We'll take a look here at this onboard perspective. Look, there's the tap, so he's got to try and grab it, and then going up through the gears, 5th gear, and the car just swaps on him.
Yeah, 1,000 horsepower going through the rear through the rear tires on these cars, and again, maybe with that bit of instability, it just introduced a little bit of flash heating to that rear axle, and those mediums couldn't quite handle the load that Bernstorff was trying to put through it. But of course, going uphill and turning to the left, it is gonna slide that rear around a little bit.
Emil Lundell has just dived into the pits. He's got damage to the front right of his wing. It's bent in by about half a tyre width, and so he's getting a fresh wing going off of his medium tyres, which he spent only 2 laps on, gone to a set of soft compound tyres, and will look to try and recover his race the best that he can. Tough for him off of this start, but he's now got to do it the long way out there in this race. A lot of work to do to try and bring himself back into range. There is your top 3. Reed leading Radice, leading Kammeyer in 3rd position. Florian Kammeyer keeping Radice honest. It's then Anthony Capp, Volta Lux in 5th, James Byrne 6th, and then Wesley Batista, who started 14th on the grid, up 7 spots already. He's P7.
Yeah, a lot of chaos, of course, assisted in that one, but one driver that's impressing me so far is Florian Kammeyer. He's a driver that we know has really good early stint pace and can really extract the pace out of the rubber early on, but maybe he takes a little bit too much out of it that leaves him vulnerable towards the end of the life on the tyres. So keep an eye on Kammeyer. He maybe has a few lessons to learn when it comes to massaging a tyre through the course of a stint, but maybe he's figured that out here today and can challenge for the top 2 spots.
Well, we do need to talk about weather at some point because it will play a key factor as Eduardo Radice sets the fastest lap of the race, has DRS, and now we'll look to close in on Jacob Reed for the race lead. So it is 36 degrees track temperature, but it's so blustery today. 26 kilometers an hour coming in from the southwest here today. It's a crosswind as you come across, a cross headwind as you come across the front stretch here, and crucially, as you make the run to 130R, it's a cross headwind.
Yeah, and these cars are going to be feeling it as well. It'll help put a little bit more grip on the front end of the car, but when it turns into a crosswind, these cars are turning into a little bit of a sail, because look just how long they are. As I think that's Radice in the background going a little bit wide at the hairpin. They just get pushed all the way out to the exit of the corner, so it's something you really have to adjust for in the cockpit of these cars, especially when they're so aero-sensitive.
Yeah, so we've just seen Emil Bernstorff in for a pit. He's had to change the front wing. Everybody except 2 drivers started this race on the medium compound tyres. The other 2, to keep in mind, Brad Newman on a soft and Kent Nielsen, who is out there currently on a soft tyre. But Nielsen's down in 18th position and a little bit worse for wear out there. But Brad Newman starting on a soft is 9th position, so he's on the alternative strategy here today. Everybody else has decided the medium is going to be the way. And speaking of the way, it's worth talking about downforce packages here, because Jacob Reed, as I look at things here, has gone high downforce. And again, he had this issue last year as Eduardo Radice snipes the race lead away. He had the issue of high downforce, helped him in certain sections, but when it comes to the top speed, he gets bit. Yeah,
this track is certainly one of 2 halves with that big twisty first sector. It's certainly where that higher downforce aero package is going to come into play.
Oh, look at this.
We saw it on the previous lap, just how much Radice was caught. These 2 are scrapping. A little bit of overlap on the exit of the S's for Jacob Reed. but just not able to make that one work. Radice with that extra top-end speed is going to be absolutely mega for the next half of the lap.
Well, this is the key. The first half of the lap, Jacob Reed is absolutely on top form at the moment, but this is where Eduardo Radice will build his margin. It's about the top end, that high speed. 285 for Eduardo Radice, 275 by comparison for Jacob Reed heading into Spoon. He'll gather up the pace again through the off-camber second part of Spoon, but now you've got this massive run up the west side of the circuit here to go and charge back to 130R, and he'll just lose out in a straight line.
Yeah, and it's what left him really vulnerable down into turn 1 last time by. And maybe with the, in fact, you know what? He's going to lose DRS. He's just dropped outside of a second coming into
That's insane.
The final chicane. It closes a little bit back in, but by the time he got to the detection point, keep an eye on the steering wheel. It is not going to light up green. So that 15 kilometers an hour extra top end speed that he needed, he is not going to get. And he's already under threat from Kamaya, who with the DRS open moves to the inside and takes P2 from Reed's grasp.
I think Jacob Reed's missed a trick here. Florian Kamaya just comfortably flying on through, and now he'll be under the cosh as he goes through the S's section. This is the torture that Jacob Reed was not hoping for. He wanted clean air and the ability to run away. What he's not found is the ability to run away, and it looks like Brad Newman might be dropping down the order. He's had a moment through the S's section as he's gone off the road, all on his own, mind you, off the exit of turn 2, and that's going to drop him way back now to P13. P14 even.
Yeah, so let's get the replay up here so we can find out exactly what happened. Into turn 2 he goes, and then just catching the curb on the outside of the corner, which just completely unsettles the car. He tries to catch it, but it just grips back up again and sends him into a huge spin to the inside of the circuit. Not only will that knock his confidence, that's going to absolutely ruin his tyres for the rest of the stint. Here we go, we're going to see it again from on board. Watch the work on the wheel that he has to do. To the left, to the right, and it's gone around, and there's absolutely nothing he can do to save it.
Stay with the replay here and go to Florian Kamar, because he has a massive moment off the exit of Degner 2, and Jacob Reed flies his way back on through. You can see here, he's attacking through the corner, gets on the AstroTurf, and has a huge power slide off the exit there, Taylor, and thank you very much, says Jacob Reed, but watch out again as they come back to live.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things about the circuit. It is a proper driver's circuit where it's all about how much pace the driver can extract out of the car. But it's only really a one-line circuit, and Kamaya really finding that out the hard way. There is absolutely no room for error, and now he has to do all of that work to pass Jacob Reed yet again.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes difficult, because everywhere you look, drivers are trying to gain those places and gain those advantages. Nacho Gaspar, by the way, this is just outside of the top 10 for SimSpeed Championship points. Gaspar then with Leonardo Bravo behind him, making his first start in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and then ever dependable Paul O'Regan, who has that penchant of top 10 finishes. Remember, he's got 30 of them without a top 5, and he's trying to bring himself into the mix, as the timing screen always seems to be lighting up purple by the two Emils, Emil Lundell and Emil Bernstorff. Bernstorff for 31-2. He's driving angry.
And yeah, they're a bit down the order now. They've got absolutely nothing to lose, so just trying to push as much as they can to try and gain back as much time on the rest of the field as they can. But it almost seems like a bit of a pointless exercise, as it's going to be more of a fun drive out there for them today.
I disagree. Ooh, he was 1.7 seconds quicker than Eduardo Radice on that last lap.
Yeah, but I don't feel like it's quite enough to be able to overhaul all of that time loss from the first few laps. Radice is looking after his tyres much, much better, and is going to be able to go a lot deeper into the first stint of this race and probably spend a significant chunk of time less on pit road.
No, that is also very true. So this is where you get the swings and balances. It's very much a recovery for Emil Bernstorff, but it's about how much of one he goes and gets as he goes on by. As now here comes where the top speed is in play. Paul O'Regan now up to full force, looking at turn 1 and not quite getting that sorted. Leonardo Bravo almost attacking Nacho Gaspar for that place, and not necessarily finding that going through. So that was as close. And actually, there's issues for Wesley Batista on the front stretch. He's got no front wing at all. He's run straight up the back of James Byrne.
Yeah, I certainly hope we can get a replay of that one to see exactly what happened. But it might have been a bit of a clumsy error from him to end up in the back of another car, but in terms of the replay, not going to be able to judge it too well. Here we are, here it comes. James Byrne in that bright yellow car in front. Here we are on board with Wesley Battista down into turn on, a lot of overspeed, and it's a very late defense from Byrne, but an even later commitment further to the inside to Battista. So I think just a bit of poor decision making there to not move back to the outside when Byrne defended to the right, and they just kind of clatter into each other, and that might be a little bit of diffuser damage from Byrne, but Netcode's certainly telling us the rear wing fell off that one.
Well, James Byrne, you can see the move's already committed there by Wesley Battista. He doesn't have time to react back. James Byrne is late as he moves on over to make that defense, almost Schumacher-like in the way he was late to make that move. And Wesley Battista, I think, does have every right to be angry at how late that move came from James Byrne. So Battista now is going to have to spend at least 10 seconds down in the lane, getting the front wing changed and moving himself back in. It now promotes Nacho Gaspar to the top 10, and now into the pits then on the end of lap 8 is going to come Wesley Battista to make that stop, knowing that we've got 4 retirements so far in this race. Alex Hagland, Danilo Piazza, Adam Webb, and Jason Anderson Jr. making his first start. Got caught up in the lap 1 dramas, so that puts him out of the race then, as Paul O'Regan, now up in 11th position, has made the pass on Leonardo Bravo.
Yeah, Paul O'Regan, as you mentioned already, Sperry, one of the most consistent finishers in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history.
Never retired.
He's looking to try and get back up into that 10th place out there today, but there is a couple of very talented drivers in front of him that are going to want to make it very difficult for him, but I think we're seeing a bit of a scrap start to emerge behind. Connor Puller being absolutely hounded by the, at this point, slightly recovering Brad Newman. Puller's going to have the assistance of DRS once we get down towards turn 1, but Brad Newman has not given up on this fight yet.
No, he certainly hasn't, and it is also worth noting that Wesley Battista's down in the lane and has not been able to pull away yet. 47 seconds. I reckon he'll be about 50 seconds. He might have been caught speeding on the entry or had an unsafe pit entry or something of the like. That's going to be a long time for Wesley Battista before he's going to be able to go again, and now drops the lap. But on board then from the rear wing, that's Brad Newman in the distance, trying to get by Connor Puller, and moves right up to the back, trying to find that move on the soft compound tyres, which have lasted 9 laps, and in comes Connor Puller. That's a very early call to dive into the pits.
Yeah, I was almost impressed by the exit Newman got there, but no, it was just Connor Puller pulling down pit lane. It's going to let Brad Newman set off after Leonardo Bravo for P12, but James Byrne, after that very late defense, is now running up in P5 with Anthony Cat for company, a driver who we know knows how to hustle these cars. Sorry, yeah, no, you're right on that one. James Byrne moved up into 5th place. So good bit of driving from him. He seems to have not taken any damage from that earlier incident. Here comes a replay for you. That's Cat in the blue car in front, Byrne in the bright yellow car behind. It's going to be a relatively simple DRS open, down that start-finish straight, build the speed in the slipstream, pull to the inside, and job is absolutely done.
Yeah, that is a paint by numbers overtake if ever I saw one, and as easy as you like, there the pass gets made. Now, this is where things start to get even more interesting out there, I think, for all of these drivers. Jacob Reed now able to match the pace of Eduardo Radice, who I've just noticed has gone slightly deep in through the final chicane, so he might have just dropped a half a second there as Eduardo Radice. Now, it's worth talking about Radice here at Suzuka. He was leading this race 12 months ago here at the Suzuka circuit, Taylor, but dropped the car on 2 occasions and finished down in 9th.
Yeah, and how many times have we seen that today, just not from Radice this time? It really looks like he's taken notes from last season and applied it to this championship already. He's been one of the more dominant forces out there on track. One of our 2 unique race winners so far today, so far this season, and he already looks like he's the class of the field out there at Suzuka. 2.5 seconds clear of Jacob Reed on what looks like to be not only the preferred strategy, but the preferred aero package to really get the pace out of this car here today. And I think Reed is going to have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, out of the pits then will come Paul O'Regan as he switches up onto the soft compound tyre, wants to get off the mediums as quickly as possible. I do want to point out a couple of other battles that we got out there as that gap is flying down here by Jacob Reed now, down to 2.4 seconds here, and a 10th in the first sector, 10th in the second, because you've got it on for third technically at the moment between Kammeyer and Volta Lux, Germany versus Austria in that battle, and you've also got a great scrap on for 8th and 9th with Nick Burke in 8th position after starting 17th, and then Lucas Prada, who finds himself there, the Czechian driver, in 9th place, and it looks like he might have a run.
Yeah, how many times has Nick Burke's name come up for this championship so far as well? He's been absolutely killing it, but he's coming under a lot of pressure from Lucas Prada on the run down to 130R. Both the cars are going to be flat through there, and it's going to be some effort to make it through down the inside into the final chicane. But Burke's certainly feeling a lot of pressure in that golf-coloured car. The DRS is going to be available for Lucas Prada this time by. Oh, we're going to see another one of those paint-by-numbers overtakes. No, I don't think so. You can see that rain light just briefly flashing on the back of Lucas Prada's car. So I think he's playing some games with the hybrid to make this one a little bit easier.
I think he's got higher downforce here compared to Nick Burke. Look at the bevel of that rear wing here. It's absolutely flat there for one Mr. Nick Burke. Look back at Lucas Prada's. There you can see it there, that raised profile of the Mercedes W13 e-Performance rear wing, indicating a higher downforce package. So Prada, quicker in the corners, not so quick in a straight line, and that can be troublesome. We have had another driver dive into the pits. That was Nacho Gaspar, who has just come out of the pits, and he's behind Kent Nielsen and Connor Pooler, so he hasn't been able to gain too much out there. Bernstorff, by comparison, has done well in his pit stop, and Emil Lundell, currently the leader of those who have pitted, but you'd expect Lundell and Bernstorff to have to go longer on their soft tyres than all of their rivals around because of the fact they've come off the medium so early.
Yeah, and that's what's really going to make it difficult for them, especially with the amount of pace that they've pulled out of those tyres. Consistently being two of the fastest drivers out there on track. We know how sensitive the softs are to overuse at the start of the stint. We saw Jacob Reed really struggle with it in round one, and ultimately it probably cost him the victory. So I think it's going to be the case for those two as well. But we touched on the aero packages, Sperry, but I just want to use that to sidestep into the hybrid strategy that Lucas Prada is playing. He has to use the slipstream and use the DRS to build the hybrid to give himself a much longer deployment of that 160 extra horsepower to push his car through the air harder than Nick Burke's car. So spend a couple of laps behind saving and then deploy extra, and he's going to be able to get that run that he needs down into turn one and then really try to pull away in the S's.
And speak about that as well. You can't micromanage that too much here in iRacing here, Taylor, because you've only got 4 deployment changes you're allowed to make of the hybrid system per lap.
Yeah, of course, but he doesn't need to be out of that third build mode, especially in the first and second sector. It's only really on that run down to Spoon Curve, then through 130R on the start-finish straight, where he needs to switch to balanced. So realistically, with that 1 DRS zone, he can flick it into build before he goes onto the start-finish straight, flick it back into balance as he goes onto the hairpin, and that's going to build him a really nice margin of extra electrical energy over Nick Burke, who's going to have to be deploying that to extract any lap time out of the car.
Ken Nielsen then under pressure as Nacho Gaspar tries to get the pass done. This is a game of old tyres versus new out there at this moment, and Gaspar through the 200R right here, which is a lot higher up than where the second half of the circuit is. You go through Spoon, you drop down the hill through the first part of the Spoon Curve, and then the second part you can see Ken Nielsen getting a little squirrely out there on the AstroTurf as he tried to find purchase of grip through the middle of the corner. This is where you need to drive off the exit, and Nacho Gaspar here finding out that life is again going to be very difficult. High downforce versus medium. Kent Nielsen can hold his own, bad tyres or not. He keeps himself holding that position and doing exactly what he needs to do. And speaking of those who do what they need to do, right now everybody is in line and hoping that they can find what it takes to make that pass. But when you're already 8 tenths down, you've not got a straight line advantage. Look how tough it is to race out there on the high downforce.
Yeah, we've seen this at Suzuka before. Think back to, goodness, what must it have been? 2015 with Fernando Alonso screaming about GP2 engine. It certainly looks like some drivers out there are struggling on that high downforce package. It's certainly something that's made for clean air, and people aren't finding themselves in the clean air that they wanted and just can't go as fast as that aero package can actually get out of them. But one person who's taken advantage of the setup on his car is Eduardo Rodis. We saw that gap start to come down a little bit in the last 5 laps or so, but lately it's Rodis that's just been eking it back out yet again, matching Reed and beating him exactly where he needs to keep Reed right the way back. And I think Rodis is in a really good position to win this one today.
He is in a commanding place right now, 4.5 seconds, and he took another half a second out of Jacob Reed on that last lap. And I wonder how hard Jacob Reed is trying to drive his Mercedes in comparison to Eduardo Rodis at this moment, because this is where you talk about the tiny margins. It was the middle of the season where Jacob Reed proved just how good he was, that he had everything that he needed to, but he might also be looking around at these conditions in sim time. We're just hitting 2 o'clock in the next 30 seconds. That track's come down by about 3 degrees. I think Jacob Reed is hoping that this track gets cooler, and if it gets cooler, it favors those with higher downforce.
It's a tricky one, that one, because with the slightly cooler track temperatures, you don't have to run as high a downforce package to still get the same amount of speed, because it's the track grip that really starts to outweigh the performance advantage you're getting from the higher downforce. So keep an eye on the pace of the likes of Rodis, because as the track temperatures drop, less energy is going to go through the tires, and they're going to be able to push harder and harder and harder, and it's going to make up for some of that deficit that they have compared to the high downforce package in the likes of the S's, in the likes of Degner, and in the likes of the Hairpin. It's a really dynamic race out there today.
We might have just hit the official pit stop window we were expecting for these drivers. We're on to now lap 16 here of 53 here at Suzuka, your 3rd round of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. Tensions have flared for a number of drivers as we are 5 retirees into this one. A very upset Wesley Batista, Jason Anderson Jr., Adam Webb, Danilo Piazza, who wasn't happy out there, and Alex Hagland, who was very apologetic, getting himself caught up in the lap 1 incident. Now, I do want to go back to about P12 and 13 at the moment, to the scrap that is going on between the 2 Emils, Lundell and Bernstorff, because Emil Bernstorff is just consistently taking time away where everyone else can't. Another 7/10 off of Emil Lundell. He has consistently taken 6 to 7 tenths each and every single lap. And Emil Lundell's no slouch when you've got 5 starts, 5 podiums in this series last year. And were it not for the fact that he only ran a part-time schedule last year, he would have been fighting for that championship with Jacob Reed, Eduardo Rodis and Jordan Gronkowski. You turn around and look at the way that Emil Bernstorff's driving. This is the sort of drive that a former GP2 driver can go to. The level of, I am angry and I'm just going to drive with my head down and see what I can get.
And this is something that I took a note of just as we were finishing off qualifying. This is a bit of a lockup just in front of Emil Bernstorff. That should help him close the gap a little bit more. But it seems like compared to the first 2 rounds of the championship, I feel like Bernstorff had taken a little bit more of a step forward to take that pole position from Rodis, from Reed, both drivers we know very, very fast. And it looked like it was time for him to really start to make that championship charge. But with that quite poor start, to drop down to 9th at the beginning of this race, I think it's just put him back out of rhythm a little bit. He's doing a great job to try and recover, but like I said, Sperry, he's got a lot of work to do, and I think for the most part he's going to just be having a lot of fun coming back through the field.
He will do. That's Leonardo Bravo that's just in front of them, 11th place, yet to stop. So they've pulled an entire pit stop back on them, and Emil Lundell will now have slipstream and DRS and will move to the inside and will comfortably dispatch the Chilean there, will the Swede, taking that place away. Emil Lundell now moving himself up to 11th position with that pass, and Emil Bernstorff needs to get that done, P, D and Q.
And he's going to have the chance to do it next time by down into turn 1. We've seen how powerful those DRS overtakes can be. It was another textbook overtake from Emil Lundell. Get the rear flap open and on you go. And if Lundell wants to make this, all he needs to do is back things off a little bit and keep Bravo within that DRS range. But ultimately, Lundell still wants to move forward. and start to hunt down the likes of Newman and Prada as it's very deep into the hairpin for Brava. It's a really good exit for Bernstorff as it's going to be an effortless overtake on the run down towards Spoon Curve, and he's not even going to have to wait for the DRS zone.
Well, Bravo Bernstorff not needing the DRS to make the pass. Leonardo Bravo, nothing that you can do about that one. He just overcooked it into the Nissan brake hairpin, and it's such a difficult corner to get correct as in comes Jacob Reed then to make his first pit stop. Lap 18, he was losing too much time. He's got to do something. He hits his marks, and he will get himself up on the jacks, off the jacks. Soft tyres go on for him, and he will now look to drive away out of the pits. Nick Burke will follow him in, and Reed will come out just behind Lucas Prada.
You know what? It's an absolute exodus. A lot of cars are coming down pit lane now. So Reed now needs to take the lessons he learned from Phillip Island and apply them to Suzuka. What he doesn't want to do is overheat these soft tyres early on in the stint and give himself absolutely nothing to fight with at the end. He's gonna have the pace advantage by default over Eduardo Radice, especially with a car in front to give him that DRS advantage down into turn one as he nearly runs into the back of Lucas Prada into Degna 2 as he dives it up the inside of the hairpin. It's a move that's easy as you like on a fresh set of tyres, as now he's going to set off after closing that gap to Eduardo Radice. But remember, he can't take that much life out of his tyre.
Well, that was a double M must make. In comes Radice to cover off the move of Jacob Reed. He wouldn't have known that he had to make a pass on this lap. So Eduardo Radice just covering off the gap the best he can. And in will come Florian Kammeyer, and in will come Volta Lux. So the top three all dive into the pits. That will mean that James Byrne will become your race leader out there. Jacob Reed making his way here to to the Hitachi Astemo chicane and really having to dance to go through. Radice just leaving the pits now and just coming down the front stretch here is Jacob Reed. That is the start gap that's there. Radice now able to attack his second stint.
Yep, the only thing Radice needs to do now is bring those tyres up to temperature and start banging those lap times in that he was in the first stint. It'll be interesting to see how both of these cars wear these soft tyres with that higher downforce package on Jacob Reed's car. But I still think the ball is well in Radice's court right now, and all he needs to do is keep it between those white lines if he wants to be the first repeat winner of the championship.
Yeah, and he'd love to have that this year as he now looks to try and continue the gap down to 2.5 seconds. But of course, he's got time to get those tyres up to temperature and attacking and away again. Brad Newman yet to come in off of his set of soft compound tyres, and he, along with James Byrne, Anthony Catt, and Jorge Martinez, who's had a really quiet start to this race right now, are the only other three drivers who need to make a pit stop. Bernstorff and Lundell have also come in, so they are effectively now 15th and 16th in this race. They've got about 15 seconds to chase down on Cotapula if they want sim speed points here today. Busy as it gets at the Nissan brake hairpin right now. Look at this four going by. Kent Nielsen with Nick Burke, Nacho Gaspar, and Lucas Prada on the back now with fresh tyres. Here he comes to Spoon, looking for the inside, not there.
Yeah, you can see again that rain light flashing on the back of Gaspar's car. He is not using any of that hybrid energy right now. And it was almost an opportunity for Prada to throw it up the inside of Spoon Curve, as Jacob Reed actually takes the fastest lap of the race so far, really taking advantage of those fresh softs and the high downforce package. But here we go, here comes, goodness me, Lucas Prada down the inside of the final chicane, and there was nothing that Gaspar could do about that one, as now he has to settle in behind and watch that car run away on the straight.
I'd take a look at Eduardo Radice now, because he's got to get by both Martinez and Catt, who are yet to come in and make a stop. And there's the pass back by Nacho Gaspar. Fantastic trading between those two, but there's Eduardo Radice. He comfortably dispatches then of Jorge Martinez for position, and he had to on the exit because Martinez was slow driving there off of Degna 2. And Anthony Catt, who leads this race, one of only two drivers in all of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour to deal with that. Look at that, straight down the inside for Eduardo Radice. Anthony Cat, nothing he can do. But behind that, Jacob Reed would love to do exactly the same to get himself into play. DRS he would love at this moment as he has chased that gap on down, using the tyre life early and quickly to give himself that range. But Martinez here is going to attack Anthony Cat just before their pit stops. They dive down in on the inside. Jacob Reed, nowhere to go, is going to try and follow in suit. Round the outside of the Aston chicane, gets the drive, brilliantly done, makes one move, now wants a second, but does Martinez have the straight line fortitude to fend him off? Both have DRS on the straight. Here comes Jacob Reed, and he's just used battery the entire way. Martinez lets him have it.
Yeah, Martinez closing that DRS really early, knows that Reed isn't his fight today, but what a great bit of driving from Jacob Reed. A situation that looked like it was just going to delay him through that final chicane. He took advantage of it straight away, around the outside of Anthony Cat, blasts the car on the exit of the corner, DRS opens, set up the move down the inside of turn 1, and gets it done. That is a champion's move right there.
Oh, and speaking of champions moves, Emil Bernstorff just got by Prada and Gaspar in 2 corners.
Well, there you go. Easy enough to do. Emil Bernstorff didn't want to be left out on that one, and he's going to get into leading that train straight away. 2 seconds now is the gap between him and a Sim Speed Championship point.
Pula's off. Pula's in the wall. So we'll just catch this move that's gone on, but Connor Poole hit the wall coming out of Degner 2, as here's Emil Bernstorff. So this was Lucas Prada that he was able to get by straight down the inside at the Aston chicane. Comfy as you like, making that pass, but it's then when he gets the DRS, Nacho Gaspar standing still at the station, nothing he can do. Emil Bernstorff on a rampage here as Nacho Gaspar looks behind. There's Emil Bernstorff, thank you very much, and goes straight on by. But Connor Pooler finding himself in trouble in the barriers, and I think is just trying to get himself going here around the circuit. So there's the look as he goes through Degner 2, and Taylor, that's just catching the curb.
Yeah, I think we've seen that one a few too many times, not only in the practice session leading into this race, but in real life as well. It's certainly a lot more dramatic the last time I saw that sort of mistake. Shouldn't be a lot of damage on the front of that car, might be a front wing change at the next stop, but realistically, I think he might be okay. Out over the pit lane comes Jorge Martinez on a fresh set of those Red Bull soft tyres.
Yep, and here will now try and run away from Nick Burke and the hard-charging Emil Bernstorff, who now finds himself in the points. 10th position, he'll get 1 SimSpeed Championship point as he stays there. Poole has made his way to the pits. It's worth noting that he does not have the black and orange mechanical flag, as he's been spotted today by Tobias Saal, who is in his own right a fantastic driver, so he'll probably only need a front wing change and get back going again. But what suspension damage he might have, I don't know. Anthony Cat staying out an awkwardly long time here in this race. 22 laps he has spent on the medium tyres. Could he possibly be thinking about a 1-stop today?
If you're pushing the tyres that long, it's certainly got to be something that's on your minds. 22 laps is a long way to go. Halfway through the race on a single set. Kamaya, though, to the inside of Anthony Cat, makes that move work with absolutely no effort. It does feel like Cat is struggling a little bit on those very aged medium tyres as he does come down pit lane, and I think that's going to force him onto a 2-stop.
Yeah, that will have to. 80 kilometers an hour then on the lane that he will traverse. A driver who has finished everywhere from P1 to P11 in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. Just the 1 win to his name in the series that we didn't run in 2022. Hits his marks in the box, up on the jacks. New set of tyres for him are soft, so this is a 2-stop strategy, and he'll be off and away behind Jorge Martinez. And here comes Emil Bernstorff down the straight, who will go 3 wide to make the move and gets by both Cat and Burke.
Fortunately for Bernstorff, Anthony Cat had to stay to the right-hand side of the circuit there. So Bernstorff knew exactly where he needed to place his car to get past both of them, straight down the middle. No driver wants to cause a collision down there, as he's just going to run off into the distance, as he always does. Cat, though, on those soft tyres, now doesn't have to nurse them as much as he otherwise would have. So expect to see those lap times from him absolutely plummet as he tries to make his way back deep into those points.
Side by side almost for 6th place, Paul O'Regan and James Byrne finding themselves together out on track, and Byrne was looking desperate off of the Nissan brake hairpin to try and find a move. Didn't quite manage it, but again looking for drive once more, coming out of Spoon, and you're seeing again different packages. High downforce for James Byrne, medium downforce for Paul O'Regan. Even with slipstream, O'Regan walks away from him.
And it's literally putting absolutely no effort in. It's just how much skinnier that rear wing is relative to the car behind. It's basically free lap time in the final half of this lap. Byrne is going to have DRS on the run down into turn 1, but is he going to have the electrical energy to really push that car through the air and make a move down the inside? It certainly doesn't look like it, but he's having a peek and fill in O'Regan's mirrors with that bright yellow Mercedes. O'Regan is going to hold on, as Byrne is going to have to wait at least one more lap to make that move work.
Oh, he might try and set him up here for the Gyaku back around the outside. Really trying to find it. Now the Nippo corner. Up and under, up and under, up and under. And now he'll get the drive. Here comes the move then. It'll be the outside of the Degners, and wisely he backs out of it. These two jutting right-handers. You can't make a move here. And Paul O'Regan survives for a moment, but now here comes the look to the Nissan brake hairpin again. Having to look at where the right angle is. It's still not available. Maybe he should have lunged.
O'Regan dealing with this pressure absolutely brilliantly though, and even with a poor exit from the hairpin, just gets the drive out of the corner. The slightly lower drag on that car just helping him walk his way into the distance yet again. We saw him make a small mistake through Spoon Curve last time around. He's going to keep it neat and tidy this time, as it's a great exit from Byrne, but once again there's just absolutely nothing he can do because he's got so much more drag on the car relative to the vehicle in front of him.
But he's a little bit closer than he was a lap ago, so this will give him some solace in terms of trying to find this pass. Paul O'Regan, who has been so good at finding himself the finish, so good at knowing how to pick and choose his battles, now sees the front stretch again. Full bore on the DRS. The battery will be empty trying to make this pass, and now we'll move side by side, and Paul O'Regan doesn't fight it because through down the inside goes James Byrne with the superior downforce now, and will look to run away in this opening sector. Great move. James Byrne now finds himself P5 out there in this race.
Yeah, never mind the opening sector. That's the first 4 corners. He's 1.3 seconds clear of Paul O'Regan already, who's been running in that clean air for a very long time at this point, and suddenly has to switch his driving style to get used to a load of turbulent air being thrown at his car. And with that slightly lower downforce package, he's just not quite able to handle it. As we're going to have a quick switch over to a fight between Nick Burke and Anthony Cat. Cat making great use of those fresher soft compound tyres, as Luke Spada in the background there as well. Is Cat going to have a go into the hairpin? Not quite this time by, but it's a lock-up from Burke, and that's going to leave him vulnerable.
And also Emil Lundell might be starting to sniff about as well after his front row start to this race. Burke looking back at Cat, looking back at Prada, who has a little look then over to Spoon. Connor Pooler back in the pits again then for another stop, and this time a retirement from the race for Connor Pooler. He says his day's done, and as such that is our 6th retirement of the race. Back stretch now looking over the top of the circuit now through 130R, and this is for 2 and 1 Sim Speed Championship points at the moment. Prada and Lundell can only look right now, and it is a really strong international flavour of this one. It's the American versus the Brit versus the Czechian versus the Swede, as now here comes Cat again, looking here at the inside, down the hill on lap 26, halfway stage of the race, move made.
Yep, it's a move that we've seen so many times in this race so far. DRS open, straight through you go with not much effort, but of course you've got to make sure that car stays close enough. It's one thing that I've been noticing from a couple of the guys on that higher downforce package, is they just don't seem to be taking advantage of their superior speed through Spoon Curve. A lot of these guys are making these moves work down into turn 1 eventually, but I feel like if they just backed off the entry to that first part of Spoon and then drove it a bit harder through the second, they're going to stop getting checked up on the exit of Spoon and really start to make those runs earlier. And Nick Clark has just been absolutely mugged off around the outside of the hairpin, as Berg gets himself, Prada even gets himself up into P10, and Burke now has to scramble outside the SimSpeed Championship points. That was one heck of a move.
Well, they say that the devil wears Prada, but Lucas Prada is proving that he is an absolute saint at making moves around the outside, but he's got no top-end drive, remember, in comparison to Nick Burke and Emil Lundell. So Burke can try and have a go back into the Aston Martin chicane, wisely decides against it, because why would you go for it now when you've got the DRS here along the front section to go with? Emil Lundell's going to try and get himself involved here to try and get this pass through as well, and Lucas Prada, for all that work around the outside, he's going to try and defend it to the middle, but Nick Burke will go around the outside of turn 1 and leave him standing in a Kimi Räikkönen-esque move like it's 05.
Anything you can do, I can do better, says Nick Burke. Sends it right to the outside of turn 1. Brave as you like, squeezes a car with higher downforce onto the inside of the circuit and still manages to make it stick. This battle is going to keep going for a very long time, as Lucas Prada has far from given up yet. We're approaching the same corner. He made his move up into P10 on the previous lap. Burke should be wise to it this time, but Prada might have another go at it. Decides to not, as he's just going to settle for 11th for now. Burke a little bit deep, but that medium downforce package is going to give him the advantage in this next section.
And also keep in mind, Paul O'Regan, Jorge Martinez and Emil Bernstorff, 6th, 7th and 8th out there at the moment, is also proving to be an important battleground here in this one. O'Regan looking behind at Martinez, who is trying his best on fresher tyres than Emil Bernstorff to keep himself in play. It's medium versus medium downforce, so they're all even keel in terms of straight line speed, but Paul O'Regan here needs this drive off the exit. Jorge Martinez will have the DRS here on lap 28, which they go on to. Here comes the look down towards the inside. Martinez making that move, and now that puts him up into P6 as he gets it done. He runs very deep through turn 1, and Emil Bernstorff just stalking these two behind, realizing that his race is there and he'll want to try and get through up to James Byrne. I'd say top 5 still possible for Emil Bernstorff after what's happened, and Lundell is now in the pits.
I'd almost say it's insane to think about that Bernstorff is knocking on the door of the top 5, but we know how fast he is, and I think seeing himself making this charge through the field after making such almost a rookie error at the start of the race is going to be really frustrating for him, because he's going to be looking at this going, I know I have the pace here to make that work and to gain those positions. But yeah, as you say, Sperry, it does look like it's a retirement for Emil Lundell.
Yeah, he's just pulled the car off into the pits and retired it, so Emil Lundell will not score points here today, and as such is going to be classified as a retirement for the first time in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. It's taken him 6 starts to find his first retirement out there. Nick Burke still battling with Lucas Prada and trying to find that place and that all-important move into the top 10 out there on track, so we will see whether that move is going to manifest, as Emil Bernstorff now puts himself in the prime position here to try and find the move on Paul O'Regan, which we'll need to look forward to on that, because that move's going to be coming up in about 3 seconds, in about 2 seconds, in about 1 second, in about now. Down the inside, Emil Bernstorff is romping here at Suzuka. Simply sublime as he moves himself up to P7.
I can't lie, Sperry, I'm starting to run out of ways to describe DRS overtakes down into turn 1, but Bernstorff just getting that done at exactly the right moment to give himself 2.5 seconds of clear air in front of him to start to get that gap closed to Jorge Martinez. He's not quite running out of time in this race yet. We're only about halfway there, but those soft compound tyres are certainly going to be running out of life soon enough.
Down to just 15 runners here in your Japanese Grand Prix, here at the iRacing Grand Prix Tour Championship, round 3 of this one as we go. Lucas Prada on the outside looking in, a driver who has all of the hallmarks of one of the best sim racers in the world. Over 8,000 iRating, drives at the WSR Esports Butt Kicker team, which is a team in endurance circles, which you look at, Taylor, and is one that is alarm bells ringing in terms of what they've done over the last couple of years, to say they are probably in tier 1.5 to tier 2 of the best sim racing teams in the world.
Well, you know me, Sperry. I've got a little bit of bias towards sports car and endurance racing teams. So Lucas Prada, go out there and get that bread. But I want to give some compliments to Nick Burke here, because he was absolutely mugged off around the outside of the hairpin. But it seems like that woke something in him, and he has been absolutely unstoppable relative to Lucas Prada over these last 5 laps or so, as Prada just hasn't been able to get close enough to make that move work. He's got the superior grip in the first half of the lap, but it's not enough to make any sort of move work. Down into Spoon, down into 130R, down into turn 1. Burke is just absolutely nailing keeping that gap where it needs to be right now.
Absolutely is, and there are some important drives that are going out here today, so keep an eye out on what's going on 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th in the championship, because I think Kammerer, Lux, Byrne, Martinez and Bernsdorf, you've got 5 different drivers out there overall really that you can look at. You can throw Anthony Catt in as a 6th really here today, Taylor, and say those 6 drivers are fighting at the moment for 3rd place in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour Sim Speed Championship.
We talk about Cat, he's trying to make his way through Paul O'Regan to get himself another few points. There was a lockup down into the hairpin from Paul O'Regan just now, and Cat tried to make his way down the inside into, or around the outside into 200R even, but just didn't quite have that straight line speed. He's much closer than he has been all race so far, so watch to see just how much of an advantage that DRS is going to get him. Going to carry a bit more speed through that final chicane. That rear flap is going to open. O'Regan will have the advantage in the early part of the straight, but now that that DRS is open, into the slipstream he goes. The speed builds, the gap closes, pulls to the inside. They're side by side on the way into 1, and Anthony Catt makes that move work and makes that move stick.
Yeah, and you can see your championship standings as they are live on the right-hand side of your screen. Eduardo Radice would be 7 points clear at the top of the Sim Speed Championship, heading over to the 4th round. If things stay like this, his margin now 10.5 seconds at the front of the field over Jacob Reed. It's the largest gap that we have seen so far this season, as Nick Burke continues to stave off the challenge of Lucas Prada for 1 Sim Speed Championship point, and they've got to be a little bit concerned about who's behind them and who's keeping them honest right now. It's Brad Newman, and Brad, remember, is keeping them honest on a set of the medium compound tyres. He's on an alternate strategy, so if he can keep pace on the mediums, he can go quicker on a set of softs.
Yeah, with the way these boys are scrapping as well, they are using up those softs. You saw that lock-up from Nick Burke into the hairpin just this time by. And Brad Newman is almost rubbing his hands together in the background there. On average, about 0.4 of a second faster over the last 3 laps than both of these cars in front of him. He doesn't have to rush this. He can just slowly walk his way up to the back of these two and then make the overtake when the pit stop cycle kicks off. It's going to be a game of patience for Newman, because I don't think he has the overall pace to beat these two. But with the way they're driving, the strategy is certainly going to fall his way.
Yeah, and that strategy, I think, is going to be really, really important to keep in mind. I look around at a driver like Walter Lux, for example, in 4th position. I don't think second's out the realm of possibility for him if things fall his way. His first ever podium, by the way, was a 3rd place at Hungaroring back 2 years ago, 2023. And he is certainly someone who has been going through and gaining those results. 5th in 1 championship, 2023. 4th in the 2nd championship he participated in 2024. He's 5th all-time in points at the moment, and he's vastly being caught on that regard by Eduardo Radice, but someone who definitely is on the cusp of finding a championship win here, Taylor, but just needs a little bit more as we focus on Nacho Gaspar here in 13th position right now. It's lucky for some because he's managed to find himself by a certain Mr. Paul O'Regan, who I believe has just come into the pits and got what should be his final stop of the race done out of the way and early.
It might be, yeah, no, we know those softs can go about 20 laps or so. We did tease that they may be able to go 30, but yeah, taking that final pit stop nice and early on in this race with 21 laps to go, it's going to give him a really nice window to extract the pace out of those tyres. And again, he still needs to bring them in gently, and he still needs to get past the drivers in front of him that are on slightly slower tyres at this stage. But thankfully for him, he's going to have Gaspar in front that he's going to be able to slipstream off on the run down into the final chicane, pick up that DRS down into turn 1 and just gain a free bit of lap time on everyone else around him, and it should really help him in that fight between him and Voltalux and Burn. Peaks to the inside of turn 16. Is it going to make anything work there? But it's a little bit of patience, a little bit of DRS that's going to get him down the inside of turn 1, but Gaspar pits anyway.
Yeah, not a bad decision by Nacho Gaspar to keep himself out of the way there of the harder charging Paul O'Regan out there. So Gaspar in for his final stop will look for another set of the soft tyres to go and make his race happen. Car number 7 by iRacing, and down in 14th position as he dived down into the pits. He now becomes the last runner in this field in 15th overall as it stands. 4.2 seconds his pit stop was able to take. Jorge Martinez, though, by the way, has now reeled in James Byrne. This for the top 5 out there. That gap's 1 second. Bernstorff's tyres starting to fade here. He's stuck at about 3 seconds off the back of this at the moment. We've talked about this. Martinez has had a really quiet race. He had a shocker of a Mugello where he had to convert himself over to a 3-stop strategy. Definitely not the result there that was wanted for someone of his quality. But you talk about Jorge Martinez, he's someone who's never strung a full season together, but he is a perennial top 10 battler, a race winner last year, of course, at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, and he's really taken advantage of all of the decisions that he's made out there on track today. We keep touching on the difference in aero packages that we're seeing out there on the track. And Martinez is on what we think is the better package on the medium downforce trim. And again, he's extracting the pace out of it exactly where he needs to. He's not rushing through that first sector. So he's not taking all the edge off his tyres and burning through them really early on in the stint. He's saving as much as he can for later down the line, because that's when he's making all of his moves stick. Byrne is coming under a lot of pressure from him at the moment, both of them on similarly aged tyres, but with the way that Byrne has to push through sector 1 to make sure he's clear into the final sector, it is going to take the life out of those softs, and I think this is where Martinez is going to make that move.
I think Voltalux needs to come in first here of all the drivers, as out of the pits comes both the likes then of Kent Nielsen, and also that is going to be Leonardo Bravo out of the pits, and they are in the midst of being lapped now by your race leader Eduardo Radice. There he is, 14 seconds clear now at the front of the field, as James Byrne now under immense amounts of pressure. Now this is perfect for Jorge Martinez if he wants to go and make that move all the way to the bottom. Then for James Byrne, he's got to be very careful about the way he moves on this straight. He's made that call early to go through, but Martinez just breezes on by. In comes Emil Bernstorff for his final stop of the race, but Martinez now in 5th place.
Yeah, I think I'm going to throw away the theory that medium downforce is better today. It is an absolute fact. The leader of the race on the medium downforce package, Jorge Martinez, making a move that easily on the medium downforce package, and there's absolutely no way that James Byrne can get his car by. Like I said, Suzuka is a one-line circuit for 90% of the lap, and you get down to the run to turn 1. And Martinez and everyone else on the medium downforce trim is absolutely taking advantage of that.
Lucas Prada is going to be so furious at the fact that all he can do is stare at the back of Nick Burke and not do anything. This has cost him his entire race being bottled up. It's like seeing Vitaly Petrov, for example, in front of Fernando Alonso at Abu Dhabi. It's very similar. He thinks again about the move, backing it up. I just think that Prada's got to come in earlier, get himself the undercut and go for it. Same way that I expect Voltalux to try and do that, because that gap for 3rd is now down to 1.6 seconds as Kamai and Lux both dive in.
I'm going to say something you might find a little bit shocking here, Sperry. I wasn't watching F1 early enough to see that Abu Dhabi race.
Shock horror.
I know. I'm sorry. I feel like I've disappointed you now.
Well, either way, 3rd and 4th have just come in together, so it will be a straight-up duel between them in the pits as they look to go and make their strategies known, and they will lead. James Byrne has also dived in and made a stop. Jacob Reed, actually, I think is going to have to be a little bit alert to this by Kamaya and also by those, as in comes Nick Burke to come in and make a stop. So Prada gets released.
And I think that's a smart call. He's going to have the chance to get onto fresh tyres now and just gain some free lap time on Lucas Prada, and maybe just release some of that pressure he's been feeling over the last 10, 15 laps or so. Yes, it's going to let Prada go a little bit.
Oh, look at that in the stop.
We're much past the first sector. Where are we looking, Terry?
Burn.
Well, yeah, that'll do it.
Bernstoff's just jumped Burn in the stop. That's a big stop that's been made. And look at where they've come out with as well. Fresh tyres, Brad Newman.
Yeah, and is that really going to be surprising?
Well, he's still yet to pit.
Bernstoff. Newman is going to have to wait a lot longer to come down pit lane. But Bernstoff absolutely nailing his in and out laps to get well clear of James Byrne. I'm almost wondering if something happened to Byrne in the last few laps that meant he lost so much time to Emil Bernstoff, or whether it was just the fact that Bernstoff is Bernstoff.
I think Bernstoff is Bernstoff. I'm looking at the laps that Emil did. That's just a pure outlap there of a 52.1, and I'm just staring it down. I don't think there's really much that you can say about it. I just think James Byrne has struggled. As in now comes Jacob Reed. He has to come in. He's got to cover off. As Marquez has also dived in. Florian Kammeyer. And Kammeyer is coming down the front stretch right now. Where is Jacob Reed by comparison? He's just got himself into turn one. That gap has been hard, but crucially, Kammeyer has brought the gap down.
Fortunately for Reed, he has got Cat almost acting as a rear gunner down there in third. So if Kammeyer wants to jump him and get into second place, he has to get past Anthony Cat. Cat, who we know can defend for his life when he needs to. Really pushing to make his strategy work out there today. And Kammeyer is really going to have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, Florian knows that if he wants to get himself into P4 here today, he is where he needs to be. If he wants to get into P3, he's just got to get by Cat. If he wants P2, he's going to have to work pretty hard if he wants to try and get the move done on Jacob Reed and get himself that position. But look at the drive coming through 200 right. Will there be a search to the inside? I think this could be place end, but he can't get the move done into Spoon. Cat holds his nerve as he goes through the middle there of the off-camber left-hander, leaving the corner. But this is where Florian Kammeyer can now open up the ball and say, this is where I want to start making progress. This is where I need to make the move. In comes Eduardo Rodis, 4.1 seconds, and away from his final stop. No dramas at all for him in car number 4. Down the inside goes Florian Kammeyer. That puts him back on the podium. But Walter Lux has now found himself there, and he'll get the DRS on the straight to drive, and now the podium is a threat.
And it's no DRS for Walter Lux. He wasn't able to pick it up because he wasn't close enough to the back end of Florian Kammeyer entering that chicane. But it does not matter without the DRS for Anthony Cat either. He's just going to drag straight by on that lower downforce setup and move himself up into 4th. Are we going to see an epic final stint showdown between Kammeyer and Lux for that final step of the podium? Only time's going to tell. Eduardo Rodis has come back out on the circuit and is that 10.5 seconds clear of Reed yet again, though.
Yeah, and Anthony Cat, you feel, is going to have to come in and make a stop, which would put Emil Bernstoff, who's come out ahead of Jorge Marquez now, it will put him in net top 5 after being around earlier on in this race, dropping all the way to the back, having to make an early call on strategy to get back to a top 5. I think would be one of the, if not the, drive of the day from Emil Bernstoff to make that recovery as he goes on and tries to make it happen. But Florian Kammeyer holding that gap now at 1.5 seconds. It's Germany versus Austria. Walter Lux is trying to find his way forward, and these are two drivers who have very similar styles and very similar careers. Kammeyer is searching for his 5th podium of his Grand Prix Tour career. Walter Lux looking for his 6th podium of his Grand Prix Tour career. Walter Lux has finished 4th on 8 occasions in his career. He does not want a 9th.
Jacob Reed sets the fastest lap of the race with 15 to go, and Florian Kammeyer instantly answers it. I think Kammeyer wants to get this 2nd place, but he's really going to have to push to get it because Jacob Reed is a very tough nut to crack as Anthony Cat comes down pit lane for the last time as well.
So that will promote Bernstoff to 5th, Marquez to 6th, and Anthony Cat 4 seconds with his stop. We'll see where he comes out in comparison to everyone. He'll be with Brad Newman still on the mediums, by the way, and Brad doesn't necessarily have to pit. He can try and run them to the end of the race if he dares to try and make that happen, because he'll only lose the place out there, and Lucas Prada's a further 10 seconds down the road. So there's that to deal with. But that gap, 3.7 seconds here, it does force Jacob Reed to have to think about the way he races. Kamaya is a threat. Volta Lux is a threat.
And you're not wrong, but I've just been keeping an eye on the relative as it's developed over the last lap, and it does look like Reed is starting to eke it out slowly. It doesn't feel like he's rushing this one at all. Again, it does feel like he learned a lot from Billy Pylan, as it is going to do that little bit of a back and forth, as Kamaya on that medium downforce package has that easy straight line speed advantage. But I think Reed now has enough tyre under him to get the gap that he needs through sector 1. Radice goes purple, but it's going to be a question of what can Reed and Kamaya do on this lap. What is that pace gap going to be?
Looks 30.5 as he crosses the line. Kamaya 30.3. Reed a 29.9, still 4/10 slower than Wado Radice. As we watch Brad Newman here under pressure from Anthony Catt. This will be for 9th place and 2 SimSpeed Championship points if they go through the Astramo chicane and get the drive off of the exit. The cloud cover here on the coast of Mie Prefecture becomes so important because that track gets colder still as they're out there down to just 31 degrees Celsius at the moment. Catt comfortable as he makes the pass on Brad Newman, and Newman now down to 10th position, either has to lie in the bed that he's made or make a decision to go onto soft tyres. And I think Brad is having a little bit of an issue here of where he's going to have to lie in his bed.
Yeah, I was going to say, you beat me to that one a little bit, Sperry. I think Newman has to decide exactly what he wants out of this race now. Does he want to try and have to push to make those positions back? Or is he looking at that 7.6 second gap behind him to Lucas Prada and thinking, you know what, I think I can push hard enough to not lose half a second a lap until the end of this race? It's going to be quite the job to do to stay inside the top 10. But we've seen how difficult Prada has actually found it to make a move stick. So that might be some solace for Brad Newman in the closing stages of this race.
We've also had a move down the order for 13th place. Leonardo Bravo's got through on Nacho Gaspar. 3-car battle for the final 3 drivers in this one. Kent Nielsen down at the back here in 15th position. Would love to get by these two here of Gaspar and Bravo. We'll take a little look here at the move. And, well, if you wanted to place your bets on where this pass was going to be, turn 1 has been the place where 95% of the moves have happened. Bravo full bore with the DRS, straight over to the right hand side. Elementary, my dear Watson.
Yeah, it didn't even look like Gaspar was fighting that one at all. Just stayed on the left hand side of the circuit, let the hybrid regenerate a little bit, maybe start to come back towards the end of the race. But even then, Bravo has just ran off into the distance a little bit as Gaspar coming under all sorts of pressure from Kent Nielsen behind. I think we were looking at the stats before this race, Sperry, and Kent Nielsen has the most retirements out of anyone in this field.
Yeah, 15 retirements from 62 championship starts. It almost makes a quarter of all of his starts. He's chased by 1 stat to George van Rensburg, who's not here today, and he's chased by 2 by Anthony Catt, who's got 13 retirements to his name in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. So that to keep in mind. Meanwhile, on for 8th place, Catt trying to recover through the field. This is Paul O'Regan now that he finds, who currently, Paul O'Regan, is on for his 31st top 10 finish without a top 5.
Yeah, go on, Paul. We like those consistent top 10 finishes, but let's get you up into the top 5 at some point. You've got Catt behind you, putting on all sorts of pressure as it stands. That medium downforce package for O'Regan, though, is going to help him out on the run down into turn 16. Catt isn't going to be able to get by, but he will have that DRS advantage down into turn 1, a spot we've seen most of, if not all of the overtakes here today. O'Regan to the outside, Catt in the slipstream. O'Regan's going to sit his car in the middle of the road and make Catt choose which way he wants to go. He's going to choose the outside and take the long way around. Can he make that one stick? Easy as you like.
No, he doesn't.
Ooh, actually, no, it's not. Goes outside the white line, loses all the grip. And O'Regan will be overlap into turn 3. Good bit of racing for these two.
High downforce there, Taylor gets it done. Anthony Catt, oh, he's gone, he's lost it. He's gone around in the gravel. There goes Paul O'Regan back through.
And after all that hard work, getting the car onto the road and getting it back up the inside, down into turn 3. It's just a lazy spin in the S's for Anthony Cat, as he's going to lose the position on O'Regan, and he's going to have to fight off Lucas Prada, and Newman has gone through as well. It is absolutely disastrous for Cat into the last 10 laps of this race.
And everyone will know that there's been a lot of gravel deposited there off the exit of the Gyaku bank, so if you go a little bit too deep into the corner, it's going to be very slippy down there at that turn 5, 6, 7 section of track. So that puts everybody on notice as they go through. Another look here at Leonardo Bravo, because this is Ken Nielsen. He gets one. Oh, he almost makes contact with Gaspar. He gets them both, does he? Around the outside. Well, no, not quite, as he tried to make that pass. So well held by Leonardo Bravo, but Ken Nielsen gets his pass, moves himself up then to 14th.
Yeah, I think that was another late defense, though, that we've seen from one of the drivers in this field that was almost disastrous for all 3 drivers involved there. But big credit to Kent Nielsen for at least making an effort on that one. He's still within a second of Leonardo Bravo, though, so perhaps he's going to have the chance to snatch P13 in the dying phases of this race.
Yeah. There's definitely a chance that Kent Nielsen can put himself into position to take that. In fact, I think he might be in position right now to get rid of it, because they've dropped Nacho Gaspar off the back. Here comes Kent Nielsen with the DRS. He'll move over to the left-hand side, and Leonardo Bravo says, nothing I can do, mate. You go through. The Canadian Kent Nielsen, one of the toughest battlers in the world of iRacing, gets his pass and moves himself up then into 13th, which is a gain of 9 places in this race. It's the second biggest gain in this race right now. Paul O'Regan, only driver up double digits today.
Card DRS open into turn 1. Bravo's got that high downforce package still, which is why he's able to stay so close to the back of Nielsen. So Nielsen is going to have to push through that first sector to try and keep that gap, but is of course going to have the advantage in the second half of the lap. I think this is a fight that might go to the end of this race. But here's Brad Newman and Anthony Cat. Cat recovering from that spin that we saw only a couple of laps ago. It's the reason we see that gravel down in the S's. Is he going to have a peek down into the chicane? No, he's not. He's just going to wait to get it done on that DRS. Through the final chicane, they both come. It's old medium tyres versus fresher soft rubber in the slipstream. DRS open, easy as you like, pulls to the inside. Side by side they are. Down into turn 1. Cat moves back to the outside, and that's P9 for him, and a brilliant bit of recovery so far. But if he wants P8 back, he's got 8.3 seconds to close.
Lucas Prada has just jumped into the pits here and will be looking at getting a fresh set of tyres on, but that looks like that's going to be a very long stop for him. That's a front wing change out there for him, and so 9.4 seconds he'll have a fresh car to go and attack with the final stage of his race, maybe just going for the fastest lap for pride now at this point, knowing he's outside of the top 10. It was close to that 10th place. He could have taken it, but I think he would have struggled against Brad Newman, who was out there going. We're down to 9 laps to go here at Suzuka. Your gap now 15 seconds here at the front of this field, and this gap for 3rd and 4th, Volta Lux has pulled that half a second on this lap. 30.9 meets 31.5. In fact, he took 0.6 of a second out of Florian Kammerer, and Lux, I think, is trying to gear it up for as late as he possibly can to go and make that pass.
And I'm just looking at the average pace of these two over the last 3 laps or so, and there is pretty much nothing to separate between them, as much as we've just seen a 0.6 of a second swing in this last lap. On average, there's only a 1/10 of a difference between them, so Lux the faster of the two, but is really, as you say, waiting to make that work. We've seen how important looking after the tyres is, and Volta Lux, someone who knows how to do that, I think is going to be making that call later on in this race as Brad Newman comes down pit lane.
Finally for Brad, he'll get a set of softs on for him and now look to try and drive away as Emil Bernstorff's top 5 is under threat. 1.1 seconds. Jorge Martinez is now looking at this and saying, well, it's Jorge's time to go and try and take that back. They've had very similar pace by the way that they've gone about it. Nick Burke now holds the final spot inside the top 10 after those 2 pit stops, but Martinez wanting that top 5 after the horror show that he had at Mugello, dropping way down the order and finishing up P17 after his 4th place at Phillip Island. He's wanting to try and get his season back on track.
And how encouraging is that going to be for Jorge Martinez? I mean, he's still got 7,000 iRating, but there is a driver with 9K Formula iRating in front of him, and he is absolutely matching his lap times. Martinez is putting one of the best single-seater drivers on the service under a lot of pressure right now, as Bernstorff is going to have to push if he wants to hold on to this spot. Martinez doing absolutely everything he needs to right now.
0.2 of a second, the difference there as Prada gets the drive on Nacho Gaspar, and that will be him moving up P number 14 as Prada looks to make his move behind your race leader Eduardo Radice, and he will shadow him right now as a way forward, the same way Max Verstappen did at Monaco back in the Toro Rosso days to try and make overtakes. It'll be that sort of realm that he's looking at, with Bravo and Newman as drivers in front that are there to chase in the final stages. But it's been a dominant drive by Eduardo Radice so far here, Taylor. I think this has really been the coming of age that we've needed to see from Radice. He was mid-pack in 2023. In 2024, he showed that he had the ability to challenge for races and win a couple. Now he's title material.
Yeah, and it's exactly what he's been working towards for all of those years as well. Just taking those little steps forward, bit by bit, and really honing your craft is how you get good at this sort of thing. And he's just come back week after week, and it feels like he's got better or at least learned something every single time he's taken to the circuit. All the choices he's made out on track here today have been absolutely perfect. He's chose the right setup. He's chose the right time to pit. He's chose the right time to go for those overtakes, and has just absolutely, as you say, absolutely dominated. 15.8 seconds clear at the front of the field, and he's looking absolutely untouchable.
He is looking like every single bit of a championship contender here in 2025. He would love to follow in the footsteps of his compatriot Marco Sanfilippo, who took the inaugural title in 2022, and look to prove that. But for 3rd position, keep your eyes peeled, because that gap is hovering so dangerously close to 1 second. Cam Iron looks 1.1. Oh, you can taste it if your Volta looks here, that podium place.
Oh, he can smell the exhaust fumes coming off the back of that car in front of him. 1.2 seconds is the gap, as Kamaya just got a bit of a better exit from Spoon Curve. That distance slipstream not enough to bring Lux into play in that DRS zone this time by. Look at the amount of debris being picked up by that left rear tyre of Florian Kamaya. Just within a second though, as they come onto the start-finish straight. But of course that DRS detection point is before the final corner. Lux has no DRS, and he's going to have to wait at least one more lap if he wants to have a go at this.
It might not be a case of if, it might be a case of when for Volta Lux, if he wants to try and put himself up on the podium here at Suzuka. Behind, Emil Bernstorff is still staving Martinez. That gap 1.5. He's found himself just enough, just hundredths and thousandths are there on the cake of 1 second that he's trying to keep away from Jorge Martinez at this moment, and is just doing enough at the moment. But remember, Bernstorff's got older tyres. They will hit the cliff quicker, and so he's fighting a race against time. He's just got to try and get himself to the prefecture border, so to speak, to keep himself away. So at least right now, it is going to be where these drivers think top 5 still up for grabs, 3rd and 4th still up for grabs, and it's still with 5.5 laps to go for these drivers, where anything is still possible.
And my favourite bit about this is there are people still scrapping up and down the field. Lucas Prada just making a move on Leonardo Bravo down into turn 1. It's another DRS overtake, but this time around the outside. He almost loses it in the middle of the corner, but just about makes that one stick. Bravo is going to have to be a bit patient if he wants to get by, but Prada looking very strong on those fresh tyres.
Yeah, just over the bay of Issei Bay, where we sit here at Suzuka, is the wonderful port city of Nagoya, where we sit and say that great racing comes into play. We're not a million miles either away from the old capital here in Japan of Kyoto, and then of course of Osaka and its regions, of course, where Kobe and Nara find themselves in play. But at least here, with the racing action that we've had, the racing action that we've seen, it is on, and now that gap at 0.7 of a second for Volta Lux. He knows that on the sea breeze, he realizes he's got a great chance here against Florian Kammeyer, who has driven fantastically here today to keep himself in range of some very talented drivers here. But Lux, I think, realizes now is his time.
And he has been building towards this for the last 3, 4, 5 laps or so. He's had the absolute pace advantage over Kammeyer just with anything. He's been saving so much energy as well that I fully expect we're going to see full attack, full push, full DRS coming out of that final chicane on the way into turn 1 on lap 50, and Volta Lux will make his way up into P3, doing a little bit more recovery into 130R, using all that slipstream hard on the brakes for the final 3 corners, using all of the curbs to his advantage. And here it comes under the rear wing of Kammeyer. DRS is going to open. Both cars go a little bit wide. To the inside goes Lux, pushing the deploy, side by side, and Kammeyer's recovery kicks in and Lux makes the position. It's P3.
But was that too early? Volta Lux does now have the podium, but he's got to run, because if Kammeyer has anything to fight back with over these next laps, if he can stay within a second, medium package versus medium package, he's got a great chance of fighting back and saying, I've got something. But look over through the Nippo corner, that gap at 0.6 of a second here. Kammeyer is doing what he can to hold himself in range. It's not if he can make the move, it's if he can fight it back. And that's where you're starting to get this lovely dance, the dalliances between two very talented DH drivers. Now hope that they can find a way back. Kammeyer might be right place, right time.
And I think the really impressive bit from Kammeyer there is he was able to instantly switch into driving in that dirty air. We all know how hard that can be to go from clean air to dirty air, but Kammeyer has just consistently been able to manage that wonderfully. The gap opens up to 0.7 of a second, but he's still well within the slipstream and well within DRS range. Down into the chicane they come yet again. It is Lux in P3 for now, but Kammeyer will have the advantage of DRS on the way down into turn 1 this time by.
Yeah, and this is where it's important, but it's a huge wiggle coming off the Asimo chicane and down the hill through the last curve, and Florian Kammeyer just cannot get any traction down. That surely is going to be tough. He'll spend the entire straight trying to gather that back up at 8/9 of a second. I think Kammeyer's tyres are cooked.
Yeah, I'm thinking exactly the same, and through all that, Lux spotted that and was still saving, having to switch down to 7th gear to try and get any speed at the end of the straight. Kammeyer stays within a second or just drops out of it on the way through the S's. He's still keeping that pressure on, and even though his tyres might be just about towards the end of their life, he should be able to find just that little bit that he needs to at least have one more go before the end of this one, because there's only 3 laps left, Sperry.
Yeah, and those 3 laps are certainly going to be about who can do what, who has a little bit more in the back pocket. And I start looking at Jorge Martinez, and he just can't break into 1 second with Emil Bernstorff. It is so agonizing for him to try and find that pass. He just cannot break that margin. The toughest second to break into is 1 second in a race.
It certainly is, especially with how turbulent the air is behind each and every single one of those cars on the circuit. It does feel like, though, Bernstorff just backed off his pace at the start of the stint to make sure he had something for the final few laps. Martinez just running out of tyre at the end of the race here, and I think that's what's really going to limit him to P6. I said limit him to P6 as if that's a bad result. He's finishing 1 spot behind Emil Bernstorff. It has been a heroic drive from both of these drivers to finish where they are today.
It has been a quiet one for Jorge Martinez, a very dramatic one for Emil Bernstorff by comparison, who had the pace today to challenge for the victory. No doubt with the pole position that he was able to get O'Regan and Anthony Cat closing in with a lap and a half to go, Taylor.
Yep, but here's still some positions that haven't been decided yet. Kent Nielsen.
That's Radice.
Oh, it is Radice, actually, just pushing his way through. Brad Newman is going to try and follow Radice through on Kent Nielsen to move up into P11. This contact off into the wall is Kent Nielsen. Radice gets away with that one cleanly, but Nielsen trying to defend from Newman, pushing the boundaries with the race leader, will throw it all away as Eduardo Radice comes round to start the final lap.
Well, Eduardo Radice there will feel he's a very, very lucky character. Nielsen wasn't making it easy because he knew that Brad Newman was there behind. We'll take a quick look at this on the straight. Radice needed to make that move, looked to the inside, had massive overspeed in the corner. He had the inside. He got himself right up alongside at the wheel point. The question is, did Kent Nielsen turn in at any point and say there was absolutely nothing there? This will be the view that tells you what happened here. Kent Nielsen turns in. Oh, it's horrible. The only fortunate thing for Kent Nielsen, this won't count as an official retirement because he is going to be within 90% of the checkered flag. So this will effectively be a non-finish, but one that will not classify as a DNF for him in the SimSpeed Championship stats standings out there. Close it remains then for drivers like Paul O'Regan, 9/10 of a second. Anthony Cat will get DRS and will get one last opportunity here to try and find this move on the final lap here around this Suzuka circuit. So can Paul O'Regan hold this defense? It looks like he's got the legs for it at the moment. He absolutely does. So Anthony Cat, not much that he can do, but through 130R goes Eduardo Radice, knowing that he has just walked away from the field, and he knows how important a win like this one today will be to put Gremlins of 12 months ago behind. Eduardo Radice, sempre degno del titolo. He takes the win here at Suzuka.
And there is your first repeat winner of the season. Back and forth between him and this man right here, Jacob Reed, in the first 3 rounds. Reed is gonna have to answer next time out, but he's been good enough for second place today. It's only the end of round 3, so the championship is well alive. But here comes Walter Lux, who made that move at exactly the right moment, and Kamaya was only good enough for 4th place today.
It's one thing to go out there and win a race. It's another thing to go out there and realise just how much of a battle it is. 21 seconds, the margin towards the line. But Paul O'Regan still has to defend because Anthony Cat will be burning the battery. But ultimately, I think he's going to run out of time. Paul O'Regan's got the legs here. On the brakes, hold the Astamo chicane. Make that number 31 of top 10s without a top 5 for Paul O'Regan. 8th place there. Bernstorff held for the top 5 out there as well. But wonderful stuff. Just the 10 drivers able to stay on the leading lap here today. And Nick Burke, I believe, is going to be driver number 10, who will make his way forward as he makes his way through the final chicane and will officially, in the most stacked field the iRacing Grand Prix Tour has ever seen, get himself over the line with a SimSpeed Championship point in the back pocket. Let's get then the official classified results then sorted here from Suzuka, and it was one which you had to be on the edge of your seat for those in the midfield. It was plain sailing at the front. A difference in downforce tells you all you need to know. Eduardo Radice, 21 seconds to the good. Very, very apologetic out there with him and Kent Nielsen. 2 feet of netcode as they went on through. Not much you can do there as Jacob Reed finished off in second, and Walter Lux would get himself on the podium for the 6th time in his iRacing Grand Prix Tour career. It's then Florian Kamaya who ends up 4th ahead of Emil Bernstorff, who, after the dramas on the opening couple of laps, had to really fight back for that top 5 and deserves every single point he gained of it, with Jorge Martinez in 6th and James Byrne finding himself in 7th. It was then Paul O'Regan in 8th ahead of Anthony Cat, with Nick Burke picking up the final points pay playing position for the SimSpeed Championship, down in 10th. And then over the page, you got Brad Newman in 11th, just able to hold off Lucas Prada over towards the line, with Leonardo Bravo in 13th and Nacho Gaspar finishing off in 14th position. 2 laps down, but will still classify, is Kent Nielsen, despite the way that his race ends in an absolute junkyard on the exit of 130R. And then you hit your retirees. Emil Lundell, first time he has ever finished off the podium, and he doesn't even get to finish, so to speak, then, as he finds his first retirement, along with Connor Pooler, Wesley Batista, Jason Anderson Jr. on debut finds retirement. Adam Webb caught up in the lap 1 incident, so too Danilo Piazza, and Alex Hagland, for the second straight race, finds himself in the wrong place here today. But that is just one race of the championship that they've dealt with. We are 3 rounds through as things go. But as far as the championship standings look now here, Taylor, it is Eduardo Rodis by 7, but Volta Lux here leading up a very strong field behind. They can't rest on their laurels. Lux here, if he finds a little bit of pace, can challenge Rodis and Reed. Bernstorff, Kammeyer and Byrne, 4, 5, 6, and Martinez in 7. I think this isn't over and done with.
I don't think you're wrong in that one, Sperry, but it really feels like at the moment Rodis and Reed are the absolute class of the field. To be almost 20 points clear of P3 by this stage of the championship, that's almost a whole race win. And we only realistically expect that gap to climb throughout the next 21 races. Lux does have the chance to maybe find a bit of extra pace as it goes on, but it is going to be the Reed and Rodis show as we take another further look down the order. As we've got a lot of drivers who are on those singular digit points, and a lot more that haven't scored a single point so far this championship. But it's certainly going to be one to watch, because that fight for P1 and that fight for P3 is going to be close all year long.
Doriano Ricciuti, by the way, not enough iRacing to get into this race here today, so will not score points. And he was one of the drivers I was looking at thinking, well, he's normally someone who finds his way in about 3.8, 3.9 in terms of his iRating. Not enough today. You needed 4.1 to get in. So those points all becoming important as they all add up. In terms of the next round, where you've only got to wait 7 days for it, because round 4 will be at the Nürburgring Grand Prix Stracker. It has been the season opener traditionally when it's come to the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. It was the season opener for each of the 3 variants before it, but here, round 4 of the championship, and a circuit that tests a lot of these drivers. And again, it's going to be one of those downforce dependent circuits where it's not necessarily as easy as you like to overtake.
And I could gush about this track for absolutely years. It is easily one of my favorite circuits in the entire world. So many opportunities for side-by-side racing, so many opportunities for switchbacks, cutbacks, whatever you want to call it. The layout of this circuit forces side-by-side racing as right-handers constantly feed their way into left-hand corners. I am expecting one of the best races of the year to happen over at the Nürburgring, because it just opens itself for that sort of battling. And for 90 minutes, and with the variety of strategy we're going to see, I expect an absolute barnstormer.
And the only place you can catch that is with us on SimSpeed TV. And so tune in with us. It's 7 o'clock GMT. It will be 8 o'clock BST for everyone who is out there racing around from UKsville. So make sure that you jump on in and keep your eyes peeled for that racing action. But from the entire team that has brought the iRacing Grand Prix Tour to you here today, from Dan Yeaman in production, from Taylor Mills alongside me, my name has been Jake Sperry. Dominance is the word that would describe what we have seen today from Eduardo Rodis. Yes, he got caught up in an instant with a couple of laps to go, but with the 2 feet of netcode there's not much that you can do. But his margin of victory is impressive. Jacob Reed has very seldom been put into positions where he can't go and challenge for victories. Not since 2022, when we weren't broadcasting this, where he only had a series of 4th place finishes, have we seen him on the back foot like this. So now, how does he rally with 7 days to get himself back on track? We will turn to the Nürburgring as our next port of call, but I'll say it again in native language. Eduardo Rodis, sembra degno del titolo.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.